This show is part of One Place, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to today's Sports Roundup. We have an absolutely massive show for you today, starting with Bam Adebayo's historic 83-point explosion that has completely rewritten the NBA record books. Then, we'll dive into the shocking news that the Baltimore Ravens have backed out of their trade for Max Crosby at the 11th hour. We'll look at Italy's stunning upset over Team USA in the World Baseball Classic and the controversy surrounding Jaylen Brown's ejection against the Spurs. Plus, we've got your guide to the Real Madrid and Manchester City Champions League clash, a full tracker of the 2026 NFL free agency frenzy, and the league-wide fallout from that nixed Crosby deal. We'll wrap up with the complex tiebreaker scenarios for Team USA and a deeper look at the historical context of Bam's legendary night. Let's get into it.
We start with a performance that most people thought was impossible in the modern era of basketball. Bam Adebayo just put up 83 points for the Miami Heat in a 150, 129 win over the Washington Wizards. It is officially the second highest scoring game in the history of the NBA, trailing only Wilt Chamberlain's legendary 100-point game from 1962. Bam surpassed Kobe Bryant's 81-point mark, and he did it with an incredible display of stamina and aggression, shooting 20 of 43 from the field and an eye-popping 36 of 43 from the free throw line. Coach Eric Spoelstra called it a surreal night, noting that while the Heat have seen many big moments in that arena, this one just felt different as it unfolded.
It really was emotional to watch, especially seeing Bam in tears as he hugged his mother, Marilyn Blount, before leaving the floor. He mentioned that he didn't set out to score 83, but once he passed his previous career high of 41 by halftime, the momentum was unstoppable. He had 31 points in the first quarter alone. Even Kevin Durant chimed in, saying he was stunned by the energy it takes to put up 40 shots and 40 free throws in a single game. The Wizards tried everything, even double and triple teaming him in the fourth, but they just kept sending him to the line where he was nearly automatic. It's a mark in history that will be talked about as long as the game is played.
Now let's shift to the NFL, where a major trade has just collapsed in spectacular fashion.
This is a nightmare for Ravens fans who were already dreaming of Max Crosby in purple. The Baltimore Ravens have officially pulled out of the trade for the star pass rusher just hours before the 22-6 league year was set to begin. The deal, which would have sent Baltimore's 2026 and 2027 first-round picks to the Las Vegas Raiders, fell apart because Crosby failed his physical. Ian Rappaport is reporting that the issue stems from a meniscus injury Crosby suffered last season. It's a huge blow to the Ravens' defensive plans, especially since they were already planning their draft strategy around the assumption that Crosby would be their anchor on the edge.
The timing couldn't be worse for the Raiders either. They had already started spending money in free agency, as if Crosby's contract was off the books, including making Tyler Linderbaum the highest-paid interior offensive lineman in history. Now, suddenly, they have to figure out how to navigate the salary cap with Crosby back on the roster. It's a developing story with a lot of moving parts, but for now, those Crosby 98 Ravens jerseys are going to have to stay in the warehouse. The Raiders released a very brief statement confirming the news, but the tension between these two front offices is clearly high right now.
Next up, we head to the Diamond for a massive shock in the World Baseball Classic.
Italy has pulled off arguably the biggest upset in the history of the tournament, defeating Team USA 8-6 in Houston. This was a game defined by Italy's early power surge and some very colorful celebrations. When Jack Caglianone hit the third home run for the Azzurri, he celebrated in the dugout by putting on an Armani jacket and downing a shot of espresso. It was a total vibe shift that Team USA never recovered from. Michael Lorenzen was the hero on the mound for Italy, throwing nearly 5 scoreless innings and completely silencing a U.S. lineup that is absolutely loaded with all-stars and MVP candidates. It was a masterclass in mixing speeds and quadrants.
Manager Francisco Cervelli called it one of the best days of his life, and you can see why. While Vinny Pasquantino is the name most MLB fans recognize, it was the prospects like Sam Antonacci and Kyle Teal who did the heavy lifting. Antonacci even said after the game that, while others might call it an upset, the Italian team expected to win. Team USA did try to rally late with 2 home runs from Pete Crow Armstrong, but the damage was done. This loss puts the most talented roster the U.S. has ever assembled in a very precarious position, as they now have to wait and see if they even advance out of their pool.
Now let's head back to the hardwood for a look at a controversial ejection in San Antonio.
Jaylen Brown was tossed from the Celtics-Spurs game on Tuesday night, and to say people are upset would be an understatement. With about 3.5 minutes left in the second quarter, Brown was driving to the basket and appeared to be shoved out of bounds by Stefan Castle. Instead of a foul on the Spurs, the refs called it a turnover on Boston. Brown was understandably irate and berated the officials, earning 2 quick technical fouls and an automatic ejection. This is only the second time in his career he's been tossed, but there's a history here. He was recently fined $35,000 for criticizing the officiating in a previous matchup with San Antonio.
Brown didn't even wait to get home to speak his mind. He was tweeting from the locker room immediately after. It's a shame because this matchup was being billed as a potential 2026 finals preview, especially with Jason Tatum back from his Achilles injury. Taking a player of Brown's caliber out of a high-profile national game over a missed foul call feels like a loss for the fans. Brown has been very vocal about how he feels he's officiated, saying he doesn't flop and goes up strong. Yet the consistency from the refs just isn't there. It'll be interesting to see if the league office has anything to say about this one.
Moving on to international soccer, we have a massive Champions League clash on the horizon.
Real Madrid and Manchester City are becoming the ultimate European rivalry. They're set to meet at the Santiago Bernabeu in the last 16, marking the 6th time in 7 seasons these two giants have faced off in a knockout tie. City won their last encounter in Madrid back in December during the league phase, but the history here is incredibly balanced. We've seen City storm to aggregate wins, and we've seen Madrid pull off miracle penalty shootouts at the Etihad. It's truly the heavyweight fight of the Champions League, and with both teams in top form, the atmosphere in Spain is going to be electric.
For fans in the U.S., you can catch the action on Paramount Plus starting at 4 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. It's part of a packed schedule this week that includes Galatasaray against Liverpool and Newcastle, taking on Barcelona. But the Madrid City game is clearly the crown jewel. Pep Guardiola's side is looking to reclaim that treble-winning magic, while Real Madrid is always the most dangerous team in this competition. The tactical battle between Guardiola and Carlo Ancelotti is worth the price of admission alone. It's one of those games where you really can't predict a winner until the final whistle blows.
Now let's dive back into the NFL with a look at the massive wave of free agency moves.
The 2026 league year has officially kicked off, and the money is flying. With the salary cap jumping to over $301 million, teams are being incredibly aggressive. We've seen some fascinating moves already. The Patriots signed Romeo Doubs to a massive 4-year, $80 million deal to give their offense some much-needed playmaking. Meanwhile, the Lions landed Isaiah Pacheco from the Chiefs to bolster their backfield. It's a flurry of activity that shows just how much teams are willing to spend to turn themselves into title contenders. Even the smaller moves, like the Steelers bringing back punter Cameron Johnston, show how every roster spot is being scrutinized right now.
One of the most interesting reunions we've seen is Geno Smith heading back to the Jets via trade. It seems like a lifetime ago that he was in New York, but after his resurgence, the Jets are hoping he can provide some stability. We also saw the Cowboys adding Sam Howell to their QB room, and the Texans signing Braden Smith to a $20 million deal. The sheer volume of transactions is staggering. It's clear that the lesson from last year's Super Bowl, where teams like the Seahawks and Patriots rode free agency additions all the way to the big game, has been taken to heart by every GM in the league.
Next up, we have more on the fallout from the Max Crosby trade cancellation.
The reaction from around the NFL regarding the Ravens backing out of the Crosby deal has been surprisingly hostile. We've heard from several league executives who are actually quite angry with Baltimore. One exec told Ralph Vacchiano that unless the medical issue was career-threatening, you simply don't do this. There's a feeling among some that the Ravens might have had buyer's remorse and used the failed physical as an excuse to escape the deal after realizing they were giving up 2 first-round picks. The consensus among these anonymous officials is that everyone knew about Crosby's meniscus surgery, so for the Ravens to act surprised now feels a bit disingenuous to them.
On the other side, sources close to the Ravens insist they wanted him desperately, and that the physical concern must have been very serious for them to walk away from a player they idolized. It's important to remember that Baltimore has a history of this. They've nixed deals for players like Ryan Grant and Brock Marion in the past over medical concerns. While Commissioner Goodell likely won't investigate, as the Ravens are legally within their rights, the moral standing of the team is being questioned by their peers. It has created a real conundrum for the Raiders, who now have to reintegrate a star player who might not even want to be there anymore.
Now let's look at the path forward for Team USA in the World Baseball Classic.
The math for Team USA to advance to the quarterfinals is getting very complicated after that loss to Italy. They've finished their pool play at 3-1, and now their fate is entirely in the hands of the Italy versus Mexico game on Wednesday night. If Italy wins, the US is safe and advances as the number 2 seed. But if Mexico wins, we enter a 3-way tie, and that's where the runs allowed ratio comes into play. Essentially, the US has allowed 11 runs over 54 defensive outs against Mexico and Italy. They need Mexico to either score a lot of runs against Italy or for the game to be a very specific kind of low-scoring affair to stay ahead in the tiebreaker.
It's a terrifying reality for American fans. The prospect of Aaron Judge, Bobby Witt Jr., and Gunnar Henderson being eliminated before the bracket even begins is a historic underachievement. Manager Mark DeRosa and his squad are basically sitting in the clubhouse watching the scoreboard now. The knockout stage uses a cross-pool format, so if they do survive, they'll likely head to Houston or Miami for a high-stakes quarterfinal. But right now, the focus isn't on who they play next. It's on whether there even is a next. The legacy of this star-studded group is hanging by a thread, and it all comes down to how Italy and Mexico perform.
Next up, we dive deeper into the stats behind Bam Adebayo's incredible night.
When you look at the box score for Bam's 83 points, the numbers just don't look real. He's only the 11th player in NBA history to even hit the 70-point mark, and joining Wilt and Kobe in the 80-point club is a different level of greatness. What's wild is that Bam was only averaging about 19 points a game coming into this. He's always been known as a defensive anchor first, but against the Wizards, he was aggressive from the jump, scoring 31 in the first quarter. The Heat actually started fouling the Wizards late in the game just to get the ball back so Bam could have more shots. They were even missing free throws on purpose to give him more opportunities.
The historical perspective is just mind-blowing. He passed the season-high mark of 56 points, held by Nikola Jokic, before the third quarter was even over. By the time he hit 70, the arena was in a total frenzy. He finished with 83 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 blocks. His girlfriend, WNBA superstar Aja Wilson, was there and was visibly emotional, saying Bam inspires her to be a better person. It's a night that will forever be remembered in Miami. For a guy who idolized Kobe Bryant but never got to meet him, surpassing Kobe's 81-point game in such a dominant fashion is a poetic moment for his career.
Finally, let's look at what the future holds for Max Crosby and the teams involved in that Knicks trade.
The fallout from the Crosby trade collapse is going to be felt for weeks. For the Raiders, they now have to manage a $35 million cap hit they weren't expecting. This might force them to delay processing some of their other free agent deals. As for Crosby, it's not guaranteed he stays in Las Vegas. While he was unhappy toward the end of last season, the team's recent facelift in free agency and the potential arrival of a new top-tier quarterback might convince him to stay. However, other teams are already circling. The Commanders have the most cap space in the league and a desperate need for a pass rush, so they are definitely a team to watch if the Raiders decide to move him elsewhere.
The Ravens, meanwhile, have a massive hole on the edge that they need to fill. They might pivot to Trey Hendrickson, who is currently the top pass rusher available in free agency. If they can't land him, they'll likely look to the draft, where they now have their 14th overall pick back. There's also the possibility that the Cowboys could get back into the mix for Crosby, although reports suggest they might stand pat with their deal for Rashawn Gary. It's a chaotic situation, and as one agent said, it's unprecedented. If the Raiders can't find a new trade partner, they'll have to find a way to make it work, with a superstar who is essentially halfway out the door.
That's all for today's roundup. It's been a wild 24 hours in sports, from historic scoring to trade drama and international upsets. Make sure to follow us for your next daily briefing so you never miss a beat on the stories that matter most. We'll be back tomorrow with more updates. Thanks for listening.